reality that it may not be spoken about in the UK, but the reality that it does happen. And I suppose it wasn't a gut feeling, it was listening to the recordings, hearing a weapon, a gun being used, hearing what sounded like threatening voices, children screaming. I suppose that sort of made me think, a variety of things it made me think.
Prove to me that you are alive.
And we are recording. Welcome everyone to Prove to Me that You're Alive. I'm gonna skip all the flashy intros today because I want to spend that time to introduce these amazing people. I have never done this before with 4 screens shared, but with all seriousness, us humanity, we tend to often, when seeing someone else in distress, we seem to sometimes walk past or look away. And I don't blame anyone for doing that. I don't judge anyone if that were to happen. But the thing that separates our guest today and a co-host actually is that these are the people that don't look away. These are the people that don't walk past. And especially when we speak about the greatest gifts that we have in life, children. So today, Alan, you sent me an introduction to Melissa, but I think that after I say my piece, I think Melissa should introduce herself personally. But I just wanted to say that, when I first initially thought about this podcast 10 years ago, I wanted to speak to everyday heroes, people that do something important. And as far as I know, Melissa works with kids. And once again, I will highlight the same thing. There can't be anything more important than that, especially abandoned kids. I used to be one of those kids. So without further ado, we have Alan back on. We have the wonderful Melissa and my co-host, my brother. This is his channel also, the one and only David Woroniuk. I'm going to give all of you a round of applause and thank you so much for being here from the bottom of my heart. Melissa, you can go first, please. Can you please introduce yourself? Because Alan's been here, David's been here. And David, do you want to say a piece real quick as a co-host before Melissa goes?
Yeah, I just think it's really important that people actually take this serious. What Alan's actually uncovered in Wales, because it's something real that's happening, and everyone likes to sit behind a keyboard and say, "Oh, well, I do this if I've seen this," but when it comes to it, people don't actually want to get involved and they're just happy to forget about it. So this is something that shouldn't be forgot about. It's something that needs taken serious.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Alan, do you want to say hi before we let Melissa introduce herself?
Yeah. Hi, Dave. Hi, Melissa. You all right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Yeah, I was just telling David, before you logged on, I said I never had 3 British accents on before. So this is going to sound super serious. So to our wonderful only girl and princess and queen in the podcast today, Melissa, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you for a lovely introduction. So my background is working with children and young people, specifically vulnerable children and young people. I've been doing that for probably about 10 years now. And in my last role, I suppose my role was more of a safeguarding child protection officer role.
Wow, that's amazing. Like I said, Oof, man. A lot of times David said something very important. A lot of times people can be, keyboard cowboys and talk crap, but when someone actually steps up and goes out into the field and is doing things, especially something so important, working with kids. Thank you, Melissa, for on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much. Alan, can you give we have a first video with Alan. David, can you tell us your piece? How did you come across this story, man? Like, how did you get connected to all of this?
I actually just seen it in a local paper. It was just not even a national paper actually. I can't remember which one. And if I'm being honest with you, at that time I were interested in the paranormal. So on the face of it, I was thinking, well, what a great place to investigate paranormally. And then I can't remember how I managed to get in touch with Alan. I don't know if it published it. I don't know if I managed to find his email. I don't know if you can remember, Alan. I don't know if it were a number I got or an email, but I managed to get in touch with Alan. And then once I found more of the backstory out, I realised, nah, this isn't paranormal. This is something real that's happening. And then you hear them recordings, there's clearly children in distress. It's kind of one of them. What do you do? Just forget about it and move on with your life, or try and do something about it. So I try to do something about it. For what I've done though, I've done pretty minimal, especially compared to Alan. For me, the real hero in this is Alan. Alan's put everything on the line for this and lost everything in the process.
Yeah.
And I've got to know Alan and his wife really well. They're just very decent, average, normal people who you wouldn't expect to go against something as horrific as this and as challenging as this, but they have, and they've kept strong all the way through. So I really take my hat off to Alan and his wife. I think they're amazing people.
Wow, crazy. So Melissa, how did you come across this story?
So for me, it was TikTok. I don't know how, but I think my algorithm must have picked up, I suppose, things about child abuse somehow. TikTok is a weird but wonderful platform, I suppose. And the first video I saw was maybe the one that was trending or viral at the time. And I remember hearing it and feeling compelled to get in touch with Alan. So I spent that night sort of going through the website. And if I could have, I would have gotten in touch with him at that time late at night, because to me, I suppose maybe working in the field, there was no question about paranormal activity or conspiracy theory or anything like that. It was very much, this is children in distress. This does happen. It happens in communities, in locations that are hidden in plain sight. And yeah, that's, I suppose it sort of went from there. And that was maybe about maybe 3.5 years ago. That was.
Wow. Listen, Alan, how important was it for you that people started reaching out personally?
I mean, we needed all the help we could get. When we told the police about it and they haven't done anything, we just presumed that if we had enough people that were interested, that just public opinion would take it. And so enough people come forward. Like we were talking about the other day, one of the videos took 2.5 billion views, but still, we still share with the police, and still nothing happens.
Yeah, I was just telling Alan before the rest of you guys and girls logged on that to me, first of all, it was such a heavy story, man. When I was editing it, when I was listening to it, for 2 days I was walking around like I thought I was dazed, like someone hit me over the head. But the weirdest thing, and I shared this with David and Alan, that a video that was 1 hour long took me over 30 hours to edit, meaning that my Premiere, Adobe Premiere didn't want to process it. I never had this happen before, so it was just, I don't know if it's a weird coincidence or if it's something, supernatural. I don't know what it is. What I want to ask David is, because this is what's been stuck in my head, and I had kind of Alan clarify, but I wanted to get your side of the story. Like, how, because when I talk to you over the messenger, you told me that it's both real life and paranormal. Can you clarify that? And can you like settle the score? Like, is it some paranormal, some real life? Is it residual energy? Like,
No,
please, just
I
for my
personally,
sake, man.
in my personal opinion, them recordings that he's got, that's not residual energy that he's picking up like on an EVP. That's real life recordings of children really being hurt. But because of what's happening there, and I think for some people this might sound a little bit sort of off the scale, but it's attracting demons. It's attracting negative energy, especially when you start thinking about negative energy that feeds from Loosh. So because it's so horrific what's going in there, you've got also the paranormal aspect to it, but the paranormal aspect's attracted to what's really genuinely happening to these children. So them recordings, it's not like a case of like an EVP where you're going on a ghost hunt and you're picking up a residual recording of something that happened 30 years ago. That's the real time recording of them children being hurt.
Melissa, when so I wanted to know, so have you traveled to this place physically? Have you been there physically? I'm asking Melissa. I don't know if she can hear us. Melissa, can you still hear us?
Yep, sorry, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
can hear you.
I was basically asking, have you traveled down to that place physically? Have you been there physically?
Yeah, I went there. I thought it was important for me to just sort of take a look at what the community was like, what the demographic was like, sort of having a bit more of an understanding after researching the area. I found it to be a bit of a sleepy town until I got to sort of the high street that seemed busy, and that's where I mentioned earlier about hidden in plain sight. That a lot of things like child exploitation, from my previous experience, has happened, just off main roads, or children who've been abused pass through the same hotels that are also hidden but in plain sight on main roads. So yeah, it sort of gave an energy of sleepy town, but that doesn't by any means mean that horrific things wouldn't happen there.
Yeah, when Alan and I spoke previously, I kind of asked him about the town and the demographics and everything. So Melissa, when you get down there, do you initially hear the recording, or do you go and actually hear these horrific things in real life? Like
No,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I never heard anything myself. I just sort of went down to just do an initial sort of just inspection for myself of the area, but obviously didn't hear anything, and didn't, use any recording devices or anything like that.
Okay, because Alan, maybe you can clarify this, because from what I understand, there are certain times when you start hearing these voices, like they're not around the clock, right?
I can't say 100% on that one. What I can say is that we noticed it was especially at weekends, and we sort of geared up for that. It was after 11:30 at night, and if my memory serves me right, it was before 5 o'clock the following morning, and it was especially prevalent on bank holidays.
Okay, so David, you also went down there physically?
Yeah, I was going there and putting recorders in and picking them back up.
So did you hear something in real time?
Nah, to be fair, I didn't hear with my own ears the actual noises, but understandably, I put that recorder in there and I picked that recorder out. So I knew that had not been tampered with, because I personally put it in and brought it back out. The sort of times I were going there were evening-ish time, sort of 6 till 9. And to be fair, apart from the very first time I went there, I was kind of getting in and getting out. Understandably, you're quite nervous going there because you know what's going on. And I did, the first time I went there, I did have a paranormal experience. I don't want to emphasize too much on this because I don't want people trying.
Why you don't want to share it?
Well, I'll share the story, but I don't want to put too much emphasis on it because I
Okay.
don't want people just passing this all off as paranormal, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not. It's something that's really happening. So, cut a long story short, first time I went there, it's still in my mind. I'm still thinking, is this possibly paranormal? Because it's the really early days of me going. I'd been in this house for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours on my own. I'd gone in there, locked the door behind me. There's only one way in and one way out. I'd spent
Wait,
quite a bit of
you
time.
were there by yourself?
Most of the time I went by myself. I did
So
take someone there with me, but I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. So the first
okay.
couple of times I went there on my own. Then I did start taking someone there, but we almost were attacked spiritually, the pair of us, which basically he never went back there ever again. That was it. He was done. He wouldn't go anywhere near it. But yeah, the first time I went, again, I still had that little idea in my head it was paranormal, so I just went there and I just sat inside the house for a good hour, just sort of listening, trying to get a feel of the place. I'm pretty good at sort of being in tune with that type of stuff from past experiences. Apart from one room in that home, I didn't really get too much of a negative feeling. But after I'd spent quite a bit of time there, it had just got dark. I thought, right, now it's time to put the microphones in. And we had like set places where we used to put them, to try and do it scientifically. So I'd gone round, I'd put my mics in basement, I'd worked my way back up the house, and the last place were to put the last mic on the old chimney stack right at the back of the loft of the attic. When you get into this attic, you couldn't stand up straight. You had to crouch over it, probably only 4 feet high at its peak, but understandably it were on a peak. So it was difficult to move up and down it. I'd been in there, I'd just walked the full length of that attic, put the mic in, come back out. As I come back down the ladders, right above my head, I heard something run from one side of the attic the full length, but I didn't just hear it, I felt it. I felt the vibration of the steps go bum, 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 bum. Definitely bipedal. It wasn't an animal because it wasn't on 4 legs. It was clearly on 2 legs. So understandably, I thought, shit, shot straight back up there, shine my torch round in the attic, got up into the attic, had a good look around. There was nobody in there whatsoever. Understandably, that did freak me out a little bit, so I took that as my cue as to, right, it's time to get out of here. So I left. After a few more visits, probably like 4 or 5 visits later, I was there with another lady who coincidentally, she used to go there with a gentleman who had the same experience of what happened to me and my friend Gary. He'd actually got really poorly from being in the house, which understandably stopped him from going as well. So, because Naomi were a bit nervous going on her own, understandably, I started meeting Naomi there to put these mics in and pick them up. One at times when we'd gone, there were sort of 2 attic openings. There were the one with the ladders, and then there were one on the other side of the house. We had to use like a table to stand on top up to put the mic up into that spot. I was holding the table so Naomi could pop the mic in, and we heard it again, clear as day, bum, 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 right above us. Now, again, an adult couldn't run in that loft. Only a child could run in that loft at that speed. But you literally felt them vibrations right above your head. And then, but going back to when we feel like we were spiritually attacked in there. So, because I was a bit like yourself, it weighed really heavy on me what were going on there, and ultimately I felt like my hands were tied on what I could personally do about it. It's like some people I've seen in comments saying, well, why didn't you just go in there? But it's really generally not as simple as that, because let's say, for instance, I brought some lads down from my area who were game to get in there. But then what do we do once we're in there? It's not as if these people are just going to put their hands up and say, oh, you've got us, we'll go quietly to police. No, we'd have a serious fight on our hands where people would be getting seriously hurt.
Listen, I don't want to cut you off, brother, and I don't want to sound like I'm being judgmental, but initially, right, this is what I was thinking after I was done with talking to Alan, right? And especially like me coming from Ukraine, I'm thinking, and I'm not there, so I'm probably like, imagining, but I'm thinking to myself exactly what you just said. Why not get a bunch of guys and bombard the place? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I thought about this hard and I come up with a plan to try and enable that happening. Remember, this isn't happening at ground level. This is happening in an underground tunnel. So the only way we could sort of get access to that is either find an entrance that we were struggling to do or smash his way in. So we did come up with a plan where, put a long story short, I could go get a load of free work done in Alan's house at the same time as that work were getting done. I was going to smash through the basement floor to try and reach it. But then I managed to get a group of lads who were willing to come with me. But then it comes back to that fact. We get in there, we're going to have a serious fight on his hands. And we remember at this point, we're hearing guns being shot, so we know they're armed.
Yeah,
We are
Alan
armed.
mentioned this. Alan
remember,
mentioned this.
remember, we ain't got guns over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're going with baseball bats. They've got guns. And even then, we know by this stage that the authorities are fully aware. Well, maybe not the authorities are fully aware, but there's enough people in high enough power who are fully aware of what's going there that are covering it up. So yeah, we get in there, we managed to win that battle, but then it's very easily put back onto us.
Yeah,
but it's a gang war, and we're involved in it. And at next minute, I've got the blood on my hands of my friends who didn't make it, and I've got sentences to think about. It's really just not as simple as just turning up heavy-handed and getting in there.
Yeah, I think Melissa got kicked off. I don't know, she left or something, because I wanted to ask her. There she is. For some reason, it says device not connected. Melissa, can you hear us? Hello, Melissa. I'm saying hello like we're on the phone. Can you hear us, Melissa? Melissa, can you hear us? I'm probably about to. I suck at like spelling names. I'm about to like so misspell her name. Melissa, can you hear us? Melissa, if you can hear us.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I had connection problems.
No. It's okay. It's okay. So David, I want to go back to that, and I want to get into some of the details. And again, I don't want to, sound like judgmental and everything, man, but always like us as men, we think about stuff, but once, a person is really there, it could be a different situation. But I want to go back to that. Melissa, you said you've been a part of this story for 3 years. Can you basically summarize for us, from your understanding, what the heck is going on here?
I wish I could make perfect sense of what is going on or has been going on. When I initially sort of looked at the website, took a couple of weeks to reflect, and again thought about and reflected on my own experience of working with vulnerable children, young people. My initial thought was child trafficking or child sexual exploitation happening underground, not visible. And I also thought perhaps drug trafficking or weapon trafficking. The more I got to understand about the case, I suppose, the more possibilities there were. But, I would say I can strongly confirm that there's definitely victims who are children.
Prove to me that you are alive.
Of young age, that have been harmed or are still being harmed. But in terms of being able to make sense of the whole thing, I think it's very hard. And I think similar to many people who have either been to Ammanfor or have sort of gotten involved in the case, it is and has been very disturbing. I remember not being able to sleep for a couple of nights, and just feeling a strange way and feeling compelled to tell anyone and everyone, thinking that we could sort of build that army. And that's not metaphorically build an army, really sort of build an army of people. But, people are essentially resources, yes, but there's always the law. If the moment you trespass onto a property, you're breaking the law, and you will then be dealt with accordingly. So it's never as easy as just bombarding the place down kind of thing. But no doubt I've thought about it, and many people have thought about it as a possibility.
So I would like each of you, if you could please, Melissa, David, Alan, to answer this question, we could, if you could possibly take turns, and again, excuse me, because this is such a heavy story for me, man. Melissa, if you can answer first. From what you know and from what you understand in the past 3 years, are these the same children that you guys are hearing? Are there is it more children, like multiplying? Is it getting less children? Like what does it look like to you?
I think from the recordings, and again, it's hard to say that there was multiple children. Obviously, we no longer have access to be able to make more recordings. And that makes it hard to say whether those children have moved on, potentially been trafficked or moved elsewhere, or, I suppose the most unimaginable, that their lives have been ended. So I think it's hard to say.
David, what do you say about that?
Yeah, so again, I spoke to Alan about this recently. So there's a lot of different accents and languages being spoken. It's not just like one area. So I picked up accents from different cities from all around UK. You had foreign speaking children, Vietnamese, Turkish has been picked up in there. One thing that I thought were the police always put the children's voices down to children playing out in the street or in the park, but none of these children's accents are Welsh. They're anything but Welsh. We've picked up plenty of Welsh men who seem to be complicit in it, but there's no recordings of Welsh children being hurt or talking. They're all children from different areas. So it was always my opinion, it were children who were part of care system who'd been trafficked into that and used for whatever they were doing it underneath there.
Alan, what do you say about that? And I asked you this previously, but if you can tell us again, what is it to your understanding, because you've been most invested in it? Are these children multiplying? Are they getting less? Are they different? They're switching. Like, are the voices changing? Like, from your experience?
Okay, there were certainly different voices there. Me and Dave discussed this the other night at some great length. Definitely foreign voices there, but there are some voices there which are said to be Greek. I've got one particular clip. My take on it is, as far as I can tell, I think it's still happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
There was one thing that I asked Alan, and in the previous time we spoke, and David, you just kind of touched on it a little bit, and this is what I was wondering, like how would someone get these children down there? And you mentioned something about a tunnel, so can you clarify this for us? Is this a tunnel that you're thinking underground, that maybe, because I know European cities have, like, whole different cities underground, so do you think they're getting these children under the tunnel, or they're keeping them in the tunnel? Like, because you mentioned tunnel, why did you say that?
Sorry, is it me or are you talking to David?
David, because
right. So one thing I think we need clarifying is, for instance, what Ammanford is an ex-mining town. So the only reason that town was built were off the back of what were being mined in that area. Now, I don't think Alan's managed to find any concrete evidence that there's a tunnel running directly underneath his house that were part of the mining operation. But it makes sense that, it's a high possibility. On top of that, probably how far away is that decommissioned military bunker from your house, Alan, or your old house? It's not far, is it? What is it, 100 meters or something like that?
Can't be much more than that. It's 38 meters from my house to the bus station. Yeah, it's about 80 to 100 meters.
So you've got a big disused military underground bunker underneath there that could actually be used. And then on top of that, there's a lot of proof that there's a tunnel running from Swansea to Ammanford, and there were quite a bit of stuff online, and schools were even warning that this tunnel were being used by drug runners, because it's quite a distance. You're probably talking like 20 miles. So you've got a tunnel underground, and understandably that tunnel are being used in the mining industry because they'll have been mining coal and then obviously then shipping coal down to Swansea, which is a seaport, to be then ferried off wherever around world or around country. So it's well within the realm that there's tunnels and spaces right underneath Ammanford, because there's so much infrastructure of that variety in a very close proximity to it. And I think one thing that needs clarifying is how this started for Alan. So they lived there previously. They weren't hearing noises right from the get-go. They only started hearing noises when the empty property next door started having loads of building work done on it. And as part of this building work, it were really noisy. You could feel the vibrations from it, and it were even causing major cracks to his property and the property next door. So if you imagine you have the empty house in the middle, Alan's to the left, to the right of that is a letting agency. They were also experiencing deep cracks within their building, because they even invited Alan and his wife to come round and see what they were also suffering from all this building work going on in the house. So it's only, and in general, remember, these buildings are old, they're 100-year-old. If it were going to have any sort of subsidence due to settling, that'll have happened 50, 60 years ago. So clearly they've done something that's affected the foundations to them buildings to cause such deep cracks. And it's only from that building work and them deep cracks appearing in their property did they then go on to start hearing these noises. So there's a start to it. Do you know what I mean? Something you can tie it down to.
I'm glad that you really specified that. Melissa, if you can still hear me, you said that you basically done your own research. What I want to understand, because Alan mentioned that the building that's next door is a nail salon, and what I wanted to know from your point of view and from what you have observed, like, is this a regularly busy nail salon? Like, how did that look to you when you first started investigating it?
Yeah, it looked fairly busy, like I said, in plain sight on a high street. I remember speaking to a colleague around about the same time that I'd seen the TikTok video, and she mentioned that she knew of the child protection officer who was in the police force. And that child protection officer actually mentioned that a lot of the nail bars, specifically sort of around Wales, the people who work in those nails bars have themselves been trafficked. So police are aware in that sense. But again, it's always about what is being done about it. Is there an investigation into it? Is it something that's known? So there is a link in terms of, I suppose, again, vulnerable adults and trafficking.
Melissa, have you tried, like, doing, like, I don't want to mischaracterize you, but like doing a girly thing and try snooping around, meaning like talk to some people in a nail salon and things like that?
I can't think of anything worse than having acrylics done. They really creep me out. But in terms of anything like that, no, I haven't done anything like that. In terms of,
but let's be realistic.
I suppose it's out of fear as well.
And I suppose let's be realistic. Even if any of us did go in there, let's say a girl went there, got the nails done, they're not gonna, if they knew anything about what's going on there, they're never talking about it, and they're gonna give nothing away. And most of these people who work these salons, they don't really speak English anyway. It's not like where you're going to see.
So hold on a second, because this is something that I tried to ask Alan. So you're kind of trying to tell me right now that you're suspecting that the people that work at the nail salon, they know something?
No, I personally won't say that. I'd say potentially the people who were the people actually doing the nails, like Melissa's just touched on, they probably traffic themselves. They're just there to work on a very minimal wage, paint nails. The boss of that nail bar, then highly likely, they knew something was going on, or they were complicit to it, especially if you look at their backgrounds. The woman who rented that building, because she didn't own that building, she rented that building from a Welsh brother and sister. She'd had previous convictions for drug production, and coincidentally, and it is a little bit speculative, but there was a gentleman, Alan knows his name, who left a comment on there, you know, just sort of bigging up that nail salon. On doing a bit of research on that guy, we don't know if it's the same person, but it's quite a distinct name, had been convicted for human trafficking and were connected to nail bars.
Mm-hmm. Listen, Alan, I want Alan. I wanted to ask you, and I forgot to ask you this the first time. Alan, have you ever done, like, while you were still there, and this is initially started happening, and you were trying to figure this thing out? Did you try to do some investigative work yourself, meaning like maybe stay up a little later some night and try to see if anyone is coming in or going out, or has anything like this happened?
We've done all sorts. Initially, like anybody else, you think when you give the recordings like that to the police, look, doors are going to get kicked in. You can hear the sounds of children. They're obvious. They're easy to hear. But when they didn't do anything, yeah, we did start looking into it ourselves. I've had recorders everywhere you can think of inside that house.
But
I've had them.
Have you done, like, what I'm trying to get is, have you ever done, like, undercover work, if you will, kind of sitting back and seeing if you can see the same face or faces coming in and out, or like frequent, visitors? Like, has anything like that happened?
Yeah, we went to quite a lot of length, I suppose. We've had video recorders in the back of the park, on my property on the back of the park. There's a bit of an outbuilding there. We set them up to see if anybody was coming in that way. We set cameras up the front as well to see who was coming in the front, out the back.
Now, just to make it clear though, Naz, we never felt that the actual children being hurt were happening in that nail bar. We've always thought it were underground. And one thing, what we thought potentially is there was an access route to that place through the nail bar. But again, that's speculative, and that's just down to the fact that Alan, you managed to get a copy of the plans of the building, and there was originally a staircase going down to a cellar. When he got in, when he managed to get inside that nail bar, for whatever reason he managed to get in, that was no longer there. It was blocked off.
Okay. Melissa, you mentioned that when you first started to get into the story, you're kind of contemplating that it's sex trafficking, but you also said it could possibly be X, Y, and Z, meaning it could possibly be gun trafficking and drug trafficking. Like, what makes you think that?
I suppose the reality that it may not be spoken about in the UK, but the reality that it does happen. And I suppose it wasn't a gut feeling. It was listening to the recordings, hearing a weapon, a gun being used, hearing what sounded like threatening voices, children screaming. I suppose that sort of made me think a variety of things. It made me think, but it definitely made me think in terms of children and perpetrators, and the horrific things that happens to children in this world. It just made me think that children were being used for specifically because they're vulnerable, to be controlled or to be for something, and to be silenced as well.
I want each of you, please, to answer this, taking turns. Melissa, go first, David, and then Alan, finish it up. Melissa, from like you personally, why do you think a weapon, a gun, would be used in an underground facility without a silencer or anything that can be heard? What like, why would somebody do that?
I believe is to control and threaten, the same way as it would be used on the ground, above the ground. And I believe that because these things were happening or have been happening or still happening underground, there was a belief that nobody would be able to hear it. So why would a gun not be used?
David, you got history. You're like me. You're a street dude, man. Talk to me, man. Like, why would somebody be popping off a gun underground? Like, Are they shooting somebody? Are they just like
Yeah.
Melissa said, scaring somebody? Like,
Oh
what are you
no,
thinking?
you hear them recordings and it sounds like people are being shot, killed. There's one in particular with a girl and she's pleading with them. She's saying no, 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 and then she's shot and she's no longer speaking. And I think it comes back to the fact they felt comfortable discharging them firearms in there because they never thought anyone were ever going to hear it. And I don't think whatever building work went on next door, that just opened up that space enough for that sound to be released so that Alan could start then picking it up. But they had that confidence that they were safe and they could do whatever they wanted in there, because ultimately this place has probably been used for a long time. This is something that's been going on for many, many years, and they've got away with it for many years.
Yeah.
So they get complacent, don't they? Because they can do what they want. But you listen to them recordings, Naz, and there's definitely instances where people have been killed and they've been shot.
Alan, can you answer the same question from your
Yes.
understanding? Why is the gun going off and underground? And what were the times that the gun, like, is this in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day? Like,
No, I can't answer that one without actually looking it up. I know the recording, I have timed it, I have put it on the internet. My view is this, and largely I agree with the other two. I think they were arrogant. I think they've tested it, made sure that it is actually soundtight, nobody can hear them, and they just run riot and do what they want. And I think the groundwork or whatever was doing, or the roadworks outside, whatever, disturbed it enough, and we managed to pick up the recording. I still don't understand to today how a high caliber rifle like that could actually fire and nobody else hear it, but it was recorded. It wasn't recorded by me, by the way. It was recorded by two ladies who went back there.
I'm gonna ask a couple more questions, Alan, before you start sharing the screen. And again, I want to go around in circle. Melissa, what was your initial reaction? Meaning, like, did you because Alan told me previously that he tried to contact the police and then, you know, maybe the mayor or the governor or whatever, however the structure is in Wales. Like, did you attempt something like this also? Have you tried to get in touch with officials, write a letter, call? Like, have you tried doing something like that?
Absolutely. I think collectively, Alan and I have contacted anyone and everyone that we can think of. And when I first initially got involved, I thought that perhaps from a professional perspective, I would absolutely be listened to. I put in multiple referrals to children's services of the area, the police, crime commissioner, modern day slavery, National Crime Agency, multiple services and organizations that you would think would take this seriously. And many times I was met with, I suppose, just almost like an automated response that says, if you have any concerns, report it to the police. What do you do when it's been reported to the police and nothing is being done? So yeah, absolutely. I've made multiple referrals and unfortunately just been palmed off, I suppose.
So Melissa, you trying to tell me that you got the same non-response as Alan? Like, what's the number one excuse that you heard?
That it was out of the agency's remit was usually the response that I would get, and that any concern should be passed on to children's services, which they were. I did make multiple referrals as a professional as well as just a member of public. And they were acknowledged. My referrals were often acknowledged. So you'd receive a message, an email back or a call back to say we've taken on your referral, we've acknowledged it, but there was never anything further than that. And I think you feel quite defeated almost at times that I'm referring to all the agencies that I can think of that have, a legal or a statutory duty, but nothing is happening, nothing is moving, or nobody is saying, thank you, we'll add this to our investigation. There was absolutely nothing.
Alan, do you back up what Melissa is saying? Basically, was that initially the same non-response that you got?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how many people you can actually contact from children's charities, police organizations, National Crime Agency, Crown Prosecution Service, different police forces, different police commissioners, MPs. I mean, I went to quite a bit of expense. I backed up the website onto USB sticks. I have sent it out using raw mail, using different post boxes, and at some points even using different envelopes, just to make sure the message is getting through. The message is definitely getting through to these different people. Just nobody seems to be doing anything.
I want to ask Melissa a question, and then I want to ask David a detailed question. Melissa, and you can skip if you don't want to answer this, but I asked Alan this in the previous conversation, but I want to know from you. This is a tough question, man. Do you think that there are higher up officials of that town that are involved in these possible, trafficking stories?
Prove to me that you are alive.